engaged steering committee and network team member, and she serves as the coordinator of the ambassador team and for the state of Massachusetts as its ambassador. Karen co-leads the 21-day racial equity challenge, which is now in its completed its 8th year. The next speaker, Amina Shabazz. Amina is the New Hampshire Food Solutions New England State Ambassador. She's active in helping to build collaborative partnerships within the regional food system movement. She is dedicated to helping people and communities mobilize together for healthy, sustainable food options by enhancing diversity in participants and partnerships in New England, and particularly in the supply chain and food access. Amina is committed to not just acknowledging the racial barriers that have existed, but in going forward in building more just, accessible, and equitable food systems in New Hampshire and beyond through transformative policies and practices that benefit all. And our third speaker is Jessica Gorhan. Jessica serves as Deputy Director of New Hampshire Hunger Solutions. She is a facilitative leader who is passionate about improving the health of all people through creating access to healthy foods. She implements the collective impact model to foster collaboration between community members, organizations, institutions, businesses, and government. The collaborative efforts of her work help improve access to food nutrition programs and other programs for all people in New Hampshire. So I thank all and look forward to the discussions that will ensue. So with that, Karen, would you like to get us started on the racial equity challenge and how it's playing out? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joanne, and thank you everyone, New Hampshire Food Alliance, for inviting me in today. I say gratitude, gratitude, gratitude. And also, on behalf of Food Solutions New England, I say thank you. Thank you for embracing the 21-day racial equity challenge. Thank you for being a champion of it. Thank you for bringing it into your network. Last year, the 21-week commitment of going through the pieces and topics and themes of the challenge and really going deeper. So again, much gratitude to you from me and from the entire Food Solutions New England network. And that 6-state regional, multicultural, multi-ethnic collaborative network. We have the diversity of organizations across the food sector, systems, processing, distribution, policy, government, much like you do in the Food Alliance. Health, nutrition, affordability, food waste, everything that is connected to food. We are collaborating with farmers and fishermen and food system advocates and eaters of the food system, which we all are. And so it was 2010 that we launched this Food Solutions New England in an effort to really build the network and connectivity around building a food system, sustaining a food system that feeds and serves us all. And so you've been involved, most of you have been involved in the challenge over the last 8 years, whether it was 1 year or 2 years or all 8. And so again, greatly appreciate that. We built the challenge as an effort to live into our values of democratic empowerment and transform communities and sustainable economies and a new food narrative. All those pieces intertwined. We recognized very early that we're not going to be able to create a new sustainable food system that feeds and serves us all if we don't have racial equity as a core value. And so we set ourselves, Joanne was there at the table when we set ourselves to learn, to build our skill and will, to be able to use the power and privilege we have wherever we are. to make the pathway, create the relationships, create the systems and the policies with which would support that food system. And so we were really fortunate, always have to, you've seen this in our challenge, have to add the gratitude and of the blessings we received from Debbie Irving, the author of Waking Up White, and Dr. Eddie Moore Jr., the founder of the Privilege Institute and the White Privilege Conference Symposium, and Dr. Marguerite Penix Park, a professor at University of Wisconsin. We adapted their challenge to focus on food systems. And so that's how we came to begin to create this tool that we revise, we expand, we curate, continue to curate every year. And certainly we do that with input from those who participated in it before. First, yes, we were doing this as Food Solutions New England, FS&E, as our network. And that was to build our skill and our will. I will always say that. And in that, though, we found that there were others that certainly wanted to join, as we learned over the years, with 9,000 people from 2021 across all states, across 40 countries and 9 provinces in Canada, all engaged in the challenge. And again, as we know with the Food Alliance here, doing it beyond those first 21 days, because we always think about the 21 days as a way of entering it, but we at Food Solutions New England think of it as a year-long 365-day commitment every hour of those days of really becoming something different. And so the challenge helps us, gives us that guide. As you all you've been engaged in this as a community, it has become a community effort across the country in terms of, again, when we look at the challenge, it does require you, when you do the first few days of it, you're recognizing that we're really talking about the me in this. And by the end of the challenge, when we get to the reseeding this year of the Fierce Love Futures, we certainly are thinking about the we. What does all that mean for all of us? What does that mean when I'm transformed? How do I contribute to a food system that feeds and serves us all in a way that prosperity is for all, health and well-being is for all, humanity is for all, grace is for all, health and wellness is for all. And we just continue to learn, to grow, to evolve with that spirit. Taking in from all of our ambassadors, all of our, and I say ambassadors, anyone who is working in the food system, trying to transform it, we're all ambassadors in that way. We extended more and more to organizations and more groups. We found that, and that was one of the things we found this year, that there were more organizational contributions in the challenge as we, again, after 8 years, beginning to see what we can do in our organization, what can we do in our network, what can we do in our schools, what can we do in our municipalities. We're thinking about that. And so you all, I want to just reflect a little bit about the challenge, the journey we went on this year. We certainly started with regrounding. And the regrounding was always important because we want to just, it doesn't matter whether you've been in the challenge once or again, all 8 times, but we want you to spend some time in regrounding. And what does that mean? And so it is first about your racial and socialization as the person, the individual, so you can then begin to use that lens of transformation as you continue to learn and lean in and be engaged in growth, conversation, evolution, expansion with others. Certainly, we always have to look at the history, the indigenous history, the foodways. We look at the slavery and how the servitude food chain workers, farm workers, how that still is fundamental and foundational of where we are. It seems we constantly are reverting back because we haven't unrooted that yet. So that's the constant effort of unrooting that. Certainly, we're looking at confronting our white privilege and white supremacy, and how, again, when we look at that, when we come to the end of the challenge, we want to think about how do we use our power and privilege for creating something different. Certainly, the second week was on revelation and reckoning, again, understanding levels of racism, health and healthcare, how that impacts and the disparities, again, historical disparities in health and healthcare and access to, and even how you are received when you're going with an illness. The racial wealth gap, who has, who doesn't, that land access comes in there, the land ownership comes in there, but just access to wealth and intergenerational wealth. Certainly continuing on with institutional racism, particularly culture change in our organizations. I really lift that up. That was Thursday. I think that's a place that all our organizations should spend time in going deep during the off time. Now we're at the 21 day, now we're past it. Spend time going deeply into what it means for organizational change. Certainly addressing justice, food justice, environmental racism, and justice there. But something that was really important, and Curtis Ogden and I have been co-leading this for these 8 years. And one of the things that we believe is that all this isn't possible if we're not in community, if we're not changing our mindset, but with attention to our heart set. Because the heart is when you start looking for commonalities, you look for the relationship, you look for what do we share, what are those values you share, some of those things that you thought were different or distracting from being in community start to melt away. And we really believe that what's going to make this happen is that we change our hearts and lean in with heart and humanity. So when we talk about the third week was around reseeding, fierce love and future. So fierce love means you've got to be, like I would say, a pit bull about love against all. You know what it looks like when you love someone or something, and you will stand up for it. You will go on either side to protect it and lift it up and give it the encouragement it needs. That's what we need to be doing for each other. That care, that love, that leaning in, that giving, that embracing, giving what I have to help you create the pathway so you can go through that pathway and you can have those relationships. You can have the power, you can have the wealth, you can have prosperity and well-being. So when we think about the challenge, that's kind of where Curtis and I were hoping that we continue to build with and lean with the understanding of that love to guide and fuel us to be something different. I wanted to share really quickly that it's, as I mentioned in the beginning, Food Solutions New England is, this diverse group of people, from different sectors. And in New Hampshire, I mean, we certainly had different sectors participating. So it's really important to recognize that not everybody that was in the challenge are food system advocates like us or food system focused like we are. They were certainly the higher ed. We had Dartmouth College, we had Antioch, New England, we had, yes, the University of New Hampshire, and Manchester Community College. Those are just a few. We had faith-based organizations at Walpole Unitarian. We had the Universal Church here in Durham. It's across sectors, it's across live and lived experiences. Also, certainly there are the service organizations like the New England Food Bank, Gather. There was Community Kitchen. There was the Keene Family YMCA, the Ways Meat Center. And then there are farms. We have farms here, Phoenix Farm in Kerman. We had ORIS, which is an organization for refugees and immigrant success in Manchester. We had the Farmers Alliance. We had the Three Rivers Farm Alliance. We had, again, farms engaged. And we also had certainly we call the businesses in New Hampshire, the business networks in New Hampshire, like the New Hampshire Business for Social Responsibility, like Northeast Organic Farming Association, New Hampshire chapter in Concord, and we also had New Hampshire Food Solutions and Seacoast Eat Local, all of these. And these are all interesting and unique places that are, like us, seeking ways to be in community, seeking ways to build a commitment, a way of being, and using our policies and practices to shift to more equitable systems of not, yes, we know food system is what we're talking about, but we also know our food system is so intertwined with all the others, economic, education, health, which is what we bring in, snapshot in during the challenge. So it's just a really important thing to understand all the time that yes, in this region, we have our 6 states that are, focusing on it, absolutely, because we are all engaged in food solutions in some kind of way and in food systems in some kind of way. But we also have these organizations, these places of higher ed, education, we have faith, we have our funders, we have the Agrarian Land Trust, Children's Trust, we have New Hampshire Child's Trust. So I lift them up as this, again, many of you are even representing and part of these networks that I've just shared, but it's in New Hampshire, it's happening. And New Hampshire is a representation of what's happening all across New England, and then, yes, across the country and internationally, that we are all trying to create something different in service of all of us being able to have the richness of the quality life. And in many ways, many of us are doing this in service of intentional forward thinking of our children and being able to have this legacy of pain and despair and othering and all the atrocities that were part of the root foundation, that we want to, again, uproot, reshape, replant, and harvest something that our children can live into and, again, contribute to that something different in humanity, in love, and in grace. So I think I'll pause there. I'm going to pause there. I could talk for a long time, and I really appreciate you giving me an opportunity to give you a little bit of history, a little bit of where we were the last 21 days, and a little snapshot of what's happening here in New Hampshire. So I'll pass it back to you, Joanne, and thank you.
You can see the energy and dedication and what inspires and how we're moving forward. You should also know that if you did not participate in the challenge, the materials remain up. If you didn't do every day and you were part of the challenge, you can still access them. So thank you, Karen, for that broad and inspirational and grounded discussion of the equity challenge and how it translates. We'll now move over to Amina, who is one of those 6 state ambassadors in the New England states. Each of them now has an ambassador through Food Solutions New England, specifically charged with helping to advance race and equity in our respective food systems in our state and beyond. Amina?
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Karen. I can never follow up behind you. You just,
no.
you just touched the heart in so many different ways, on so many different levels. I appreciate everything that you just said. Is my volume okay, you guys? Okay. So yeah, my name is Amina Shabazz, and I am the New Hampshire ambassador. I am an implant to New Hampshire by way of Boston, Philly, New York City, Delaware. I've kind of been all over the place, but I've always had this desire to help helping others, whether it was with food or gardening or to build in the community. I had a strong relationship with my grandmother who helped me to understand what does community mean. Although we grew up, in a very impoverished area, having my grandmother around showing us how to grow food and give food was a means for us to build that sense of community. You just never know who is in need right there under your nose. So I have traversed on this path of nature and food, nutrition and healing. And here I am. I appreciate this work that I am doing now. I feel like I have come full circle and realizing the work that is being done and that needs to be done. And there's still so much more. So having this racial equity push or movement nowadays, it feels right. I feel like there's a shift of power and there's a recognition of the needs that needs to be met for the communities that are not heard. Some of what I do is being on the ground in the community. I've done a lot of community work with specifically the refugee and immigrant community around farming, figuring out and finding out what services are needed within the area and how can they actually contribute to the food chain supply system. So it's interesting to hear their side, their perspective of things, their fears and doubts and issues around funding and trying to figure out solutions and allowing them to be a part of this interwoven fabric in the food system network. So I'm not going to speak too much, but I just wanted to really let you guys know that I am deep in the community work. I love doing what I do, just being an advocate and being that voice for those that are in need and they have the skill set, the knowledge, and they want to feel empowered. They want to be included at the table with different policy ideas. And I feel like now is that time for us to kind of support them. So that's where we are. Thank you.
Thanks, Amina. And for
Yeah.
all of our community partners, now you've got another introduction to Amina as a resource in our state who is very dedicated to helping you and supporting you, collaborating with you. And last but not least, Jessica Gorhan. Many of you know Jessica, and we'll let Jessica speak to the great work she's doing in terms of health and food equity in our state and some of the projects she's advancing. So Jessica, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Joanne. And, thank you to UNH and Food Solutions New England for hosting the 21-week racial equity challenge. That was really humbling for me and gave me a lot of insight into the lack of equity in our food system that's existed for a very, very long time. And I was also one of the participants in the, I believe it was 2018 cohort for Food Solution New England's leadership program, which was also a huge eye opener to me and educated me so much about, where my privilege is in this work and how to be able to use that privilege to center and operationalize equity work in New Hampshire and in our food system. And New Hampshire Hunger Solutions, in my role as deputy director, we had the opportunity to apply for a grant with the National Association of Chronic Disease Directors to create a state partnerships for improving nutrition equity state action plan. And some of you I see on this call have been participating, and it's really been a great journey to focus on how we can operationalize equity in our food system here in New Hampshire, and looking at are we using a systems change approach? Are we looking at policies that help to improve equity in our food system and help improve that access? Are we making sure that our communications are accessible? Our programs accessible to all people based on language. And our programs, you know, our pantries, are they, you know, offering culturally preferred foods? You know, are there, you know, what services are there in neighborhoods and communities that need them the most? Looking at community engagement, how are we involving our community members in the co-creation of our policies and systems change work that we're doing in the food system? And then we have an upcoming meeting on May 20th, which I'll put the registration for in the chat, and we'll be talking about data collection and how are we using data and the work that we're doing, and is the data we're collecting accurate and representative of the communities that we're serving, and how can we also share data in our communities to make sure that there is an understanding of what is actually happening in the communities, and that people understand how they can get involved and be a participant in our food system and making our food system more equitable, more accessible. So that is the spine work we'll be doing, as we go over each of those areas in centering and operationalizing equity around those topics. And then we'll be pulling that all together. So meeting with each of the organizations one-on-one to identify those activities and partnerships and how that they can move the needle towards making nutrition access more equitable in their community and around the state. And then lastly, bringing that work to their local coalitions. There's so many New Hampshire food coalitions around our state, including our statewide New Hampshire Food Access Coalition that Erin and Tiffany both co-facilitate and co-lead. So making sure that we're meeting with those coalitions as well to come up with action items within the region and make it very specific, because each region in New Hampshire is very different. And so we can't just do a one size fits all. And that's where we're at with the spine work and what came out of my learning with Food Solutions New England through the leadership program and through the 21-week racial equity challenge.
Thank you, Jessica. And also, please feel free to reach out to Jessica if you have not engaged with the spine work, because it is, as she said, it's not just about finding out how we're doing, it's thinking about next steps going forward and grounding momentum for our statewide plan. So thanks to all our presenters, and I'll send it over to Sarah.
So we're going to breakout groups. Is that my understanding?
Do we want to have a few minutes for questions for our presenters?
Let's start with that. Have a few minutes for questions for our presenters. What vibrates for you, whether it's about the challenge itself or this work?
Feel free to put questions in the chat or comments. We can also have time for more discussion after breakout session with our presenters as well.
So I'm not seeing questions at the moment. So we are going into smaller groups so that we can have some conversation. There are in the agenda, there are questions that we can address in our groups. And we know not everyone got an opportunity to do all of the 21-day racial equity challenge. So there's an opportunity to discuss. Also, we kind of highlighted in the invitation a couple of pieces of the literature that really focus on food systems. So we're going to go to our breakout sessions.
But first of all, maybe what we can do is, before you join in those groups, Sarah, I think we were going to do a little recap of those community agreements that we've historically had. So within that,
sorry,
that's all right. As you enter into your groups, really being thoughtful of leaning in, reaching in, not calling out our, we really want to give each other grace and explore what we say and how we say it, but that as we enter into difficult topics, really respecting each other, respecting our concerns, using the I kind of statements. And so many of those guidelines are there, so you can refer to them, but we're really trying to build this best practice of thinking about our community agreements as we discuss any topics. But anyway, so that sounds good, and I'll stop there, since I think we had gone over that just a little bit before it started, Sarah. So
Yes. Thank you. Are we ready for our breakout rooms?
Should we just briefly review the questions? Let's see. I have them in the chat, and I put them, the link to the agenda is also in the chat.
All right, so here we are. And so if you did participate in the challenge, what was affirmed and what did you learn? What were some of your takeaways? And also, where do you see opportunities for addressing and advancing racial equity in your work and your community? And how are you addressing and advancing racial equity in your work, in your community? So these are some opportunities in the breakout groups. And am I supposed to create the breakout groups?
I'm gonna do them right now. So I'm just gonna get these set up for everyone and send everybody off. So enjoy your discussions, and we will meet back here around 12:50 just to do a little group harvest of what we speak about. All right, I think folks are getting back from their breakout rooms. Hopefully. I think we're going to take the last couple minutes beyond some updates and general housekeeping things, but to do some group sharing, some group harvest of what we spoke about, and do some reflecting. Even, people are welcome to raise their hands and share, or just in the chat what they spoke about, anything that inspired them, but also kind of an answer to this question here as we close out. What sustains you and brings you joy in this work in advancing racial equity in New Hampshire? We'd love to see some responses from that question if you have one to share. But yeah, so open floor for a couple of minutes, and then we'll go into some reminders.
I can share our group had a couple of people who are getting into this really in their work, and I find a lot of joy in that. We had a person who's studying and centering the people with lived experience, and someone who's coming from a funder perspective and really centering listening in the work that they do. So it really gives me joy to see that justice is becoming core to the work people are doing around food systems.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Sarah. All right.
I will just share in our small group. Eileen shared with us about a program that the food bank has applied for, a grant, local foods promotion and access program. And they are working on getting some of these federal funds for socially disadvantaged farmers and for marginalized communities here in New Hampshire. And the food bank's working really hard to find opportunities to work with growers to grow culturally preferred crops for the food bank pantries as well, to support the New Hampshire Food in New Hampshire program. So that's really exciting. And the other thing I just want to share personally, and one of the things that brings me joy about participating in this program every year, the 21-day challenge, is I teach the Introduction to Sustainability course here at UNH. And I always offer it as an option for students to do for a class project. And every year I see more and more students taking advantage of that opportunity. And this past week, students did presentations, and I'm always just overwhelmed, I think, by how life-changing the 21-day challenge is for students, especially. And so that always just brings renewed inspiration for my work as well.
That's great. Thank you, Erin. Any other shares before we wrap up for today?
I'll jump in there, Colleen. I
Sure.
will piggyback off of what Erin just said, how it just warms her heart to see these different presentations and the level of enlightenment. Someone from our group was discussing the awareness, or just being more informed about the desperate food access and how the healthcare outcomes are affected, the different health disparities that are brought to the table, and how we can actually impact them early, intervene early. Another individual mentioned how, equity is tied to education. There are a lot of issues around how children perform, when they're lacking certain food or nutrients in their food. So a lot of these issues are provoking the need for change, and supporters like you all as well, people within the network that are the change makers that can help make these powerful changes.
It is indeed, for all of you on the phone, to see us as a state moving from me to we, to making these connections and building relationships. And I really thank Food Alliance for building this capacity to network and form relationships. So with that, I know you have a couple of closing, but thank you all, for all of you, because you all are the change agents.
I wish we could close on that, Joanne, because that's wonderful. And I want to thank Joanne and Sarah and Amina, and Erin.
Well, I just want to turn it over to Karen, because she does have something that she'd like to share in closing.
Sure.
Thank you, Erin. And also, just again, thank you for everyone leaning in and being open with curiosity and hearts to become something different together. So this is something I just wanted to share, just in the spirit of where we are. And it's titled Lakota Instruction for Living. Friend, do it this way, that is. Whatever you do in life, do the very best you can with both your heart and your mind. If you do it that way, the universe and its power will come to your assistance if your heart and mind are in unity. When one sits in the hoop of the people, one must be responsible, because all the creation is related, and the hurt of one is the hurt of all. The honor of one is the honor of all. And whatever we do affects everything in the universe. So if you do it that way, that is, if you truly join your heart and your mind as one, whatever you ask for, that's the way it's going to be. This was passed down from White Buffalo Calf Woman. So heart and mind, they are in unity, and let's continue to create, transform ourselves and this food system and all the systems in which we live to be something different. With gratitude.
Thank you, Karen. Yeah. All right. Yeah, we are ending here. I don't want to take up anyone's time today or any more of it, but thank you so much for being here. Thank you to our presenters, Amina, Karen, Joanne, Sarah. Erin put in the chat about our racial equity team here at the Food Alliance. So we would love for anyone who's interested to join that. And Olivia, I promised to shout out, and I didn't give you any minutes to speak, but Olivia Saunders from UNH Extension is working very hard on an equity assessment. And there's a link in the chat, or a link in the agenda, and I will put it in the chat to that assessment if you are interested in submitting to it. So thank you all. This has been great, and we will hopefully see you next month at our next Network Cafe, all about our statewide gathering. So stay tuned for information about that, and have a great weekend.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.